Welcome to another episode of Growth Marketers Podcast. I'm Solomon Timothy.
And I am Taylor Rowe. Today's episode, we dove into something I think we're both passionate about, both in life, in business, in marketing. It's something I think it's a topic that is really important when it comes to marketing. Again, I think it's important across all aspects of your life. But the idea that progress is greater than perfection, and that actually perfection is the enemy of progress, right? I think that was a Winston Churchill quote, but I don't think he was referring to marketing, but it's especially important when it comes to marketing that the idea of waiting until something is perfect is actually the enemy of just getting something out there and generating progress, right? Over time, that compounding effect of creating progress is going to be greater than creating perfection. And conversely, the compounding effect of waiting, the negative effect of waiting, is going to be far greater than the small risk of just putting something out there that may not be perfect, but is good enough to get the job done, right? There's a gap there in terms of perfection and something that's good enough to go to market. So we dove into that topic and specifically advantages and disadvantages of both sides when it comes to marketing. So hopefully you guys enjoy.
All right, Taylor, we're back in the studio. So this episode is one of my favorite ones. I'm super excited to get into it. It is progress is more important or greater than perfection.
Exactly.
I think you can apply that in our personal lives. Definitely can be applied in business. And today we're going to speak from a marketing perspective.
Exactly. Yeah. Specifically about marketing and what we want to understand about progress versus perfection is really understanding the compounding effect of missed opportunities when it comes to marketing and the hidden cost of perpetually seeking perfection, right? And I think probably the biggest reason why we should not, as marketers, strive towards perfection rather than progress is because, for one, the psychology of the idea of like, we can't really capture what perfection is. So it's a never ending pursuit, right? Yeah. You're always there's always something that can be improved. And when we talk about the compounding effect of missing opportunities is really the biggest reason why as marketers, we want to continue to move forward. So first I want to talk about the disadvantages of waiting, and then we can talk about the advantages of acting faster and just focusing on progress over perfection. So the first thing, the first disadvantage of waiting into perfection, and again, it doesn't have to be perfection. It's always just, there's always something better, right? So if we're looking at it as marketers and say, we want to launch this campaign, we want to send this email, I'm going to post this on social media, I'm going to run this ad,
make this podcast,
you could make the podcast today, like we're doing, or we could continue to do more research, come up with more examples, and then say we're going to make the podcast next week or next month, or you're always
never do it.
Exactly, you're always kicking the can down the road. So the biggest reason why I would say do it now is that the easiest, the most obvious one is not doing it is 100% chance that you're not going to make any money. You're not going to get any leads. You're not going to do anything, right? If we don't run the ad today, I can guarantee you that you're not going to get any leads today. If you run the ad, I can't guarantee that you're going to get leads today, but I can definitely guarantee that you're not going to get it.
Right.
So that's a big issue. The other thing is that the longer that you wait, the more of an opportunity that you give your competition to do what you were trying to do, right? So you potentially lose that first mover advantage. Let's say you have a great idea, you have a great piece of content, you have a great ad that you want to run, a great offer. Let's say you have an offer that you're trying to bring to the market, right? The longer that you wait, the more time that creates for your competition to seize that opportunity and gain that first mover advantage. So that's a big issue with waiting to actually run a campaign, right?
Do you know why marketers wait?
Why they wait?
I don't know. I'm thinking. I think it's just that. Do you think they're nervous that it's going to be successful so fast that it's going to explode, and they're like, let's wait until everything is perfect?
I think fear of failure for one, and I think fear of wasting money if it is something that you have to put money behind, right? And that's where, again, when we get into the advantages, I think the advantages and the insight that you gain from, a perceived failure with a Google ad or a Facebook ad or a blog post, a podcast, whatever that is greater than the money that you're actually going to lose on the ad, right? Or spend on the ad. So that's probably one of the biggest reasons why people decide to wait. Also, I mean, if you're an internal marketer at a company, your job is on the line. You know, the stress is high.
The budget is limited.
Right. You just, everyone's so afraid. I mean, we live in this social media, driven world where people have like legitimate panic attacks over posting a tweet or an Instagram post, or they post something on Facebook and it doesn't get enough likes in a certain amount of time, and they delete it. And
of course,
it's like this social anxiety that is just manufactured. I don't know where it comes from, but it's real, and that's I think holding people back. And that's where it's like tomorrow. There's always a thing like I'm going to do tomorrow, and it's like, well, yesterday you said tomorrow. And it's always going to be that way. So I think just progress is greater than perfection in a lot of cases in life, like you mentioned. Specifically when it comes to digital marketing. And as digital marketers, we need to understand that's a big advantage. Another reason that I think that waiting is a disadvantage, waiting until it's perfect or waiting until it's better, is that as a marketer, what you're trying to do, right, is communicate your value to your customer. And the longer that you wait, the longer that you're denying your customer that whatever that piece of value is, right? Whether it's just a content piece, whether that's an actual offer, whether that's your actual product. The longer you wait to introduce your product to your audience, the longer they're going without your product, right? So it's really, you talk about a win-win situation. It's a lose-lose situation because you're not making money, guaranteed, and your clients, your prospective clients, are not being introduced to your product, so they can't solve their problems, right? And the longer they go, there's a compounding effect of their problems building up and building up, or they might seek alternative solutions.
No, I completely agree with you. And I think the same thing on the social side as well. You're worried and you're also not doing it and nobody ever sees it. And you could have the most amazing product or service or solution the world needs, but nobody even knows you exist.
Yep, absolutely. And so that, brings me to my next point about, the disadvantages of waiting. I believe that especially as marketers, we need momentum to carry us through. And I think that forward motion, any kind of motion, even if it is perceived as a step backwards, it creates a sort of momentum, right? And so we talk about the idea of a podcast, right? Is, we could sit here and wait and do the research until you get the perfect podcast, or we could create a podcast, and in the middle of that podcast, we might think of another topic that we want to write about, or create content about, or, we get feedback from that podcast that stems and sparks another idea. I mean, you turn the podcast into a video. I mean, whatever you're doing just in life in general, when you have some sort of forward motion, it's going to create some kind of momentum, and you can kind of ride that wave. And as marketers, we definitely need to create a lot of content. And so waiting until it's perfect is really going to be a crux of your marketing strategy. And then really the big piece of what we wanted to cover today is the compounding effect of waiting versus acting. So it's not just that, 3-day period or that 10-day period or whatever. It's that let's give the example of, say I want to, post on social media, or I want to run ads on social media, right? Probably maybe a better example. If we say, it's just, I'm going to launch today, I'm going to launch in 2 weeks when I think everything's perfect. It's not that 2-week period. It's that if, let's say I'm going to wait and you're going to launch, you launch your ad from day one. The copy's not where you want it to be. The creative's not where you want it to be. The landing page is not where you want it to be. Maybe you're not sure on the audience. So you run 2 different audiences to kind of test it. And I'm, going back and forth with my team trying to figure out what I want to do. And it's going to take me 2 weeks. So it's not that 2 weeks, because you might find out in the first 24 hours or first 48 hours or the first 4 hours, right? That, there's an issue with your copy or your creative. You start to get bad results. You might start to get good results. You might start to get comments on those Facebook posts that people are asking questions. So you're now learning and gathering data for 48 hours while you run that ad. Then now you go out, you make those adjustments, turn those ads off, run some new ads, or make adjustments to those ads. And now you get a whole new set of feedback, right? So you're getting this exponential feedback loop. You're gaining information. You might even already have generated some leads from those ads. Talk to a prospect, learn some pain points, go back to the drawing board, scrap the whole idea, run a different kind of ad or a different audience, all based on the information that you've gathered from that data, from those analytics, and from those conversations. Now you are light years ahead of where I would be in 2 weeks. And I have to now start that process in 2 weeks, right? And you've already gone through those whole things. So it's not just those 2 weeks. It's that now the next time I want to run ads, I'm going to have to do the same thing, and I'm going to wait 2 more weeks, and you're improving in real time. And, extrapolate that over 2 years instead of 2 weeks, right? How much more information you can gather just from putting it out there, getting some information, getting some data, getting some feedback, and using that feedback as the fuel of your marketing, right? As your strategy.
Man, I couldn't agree with you more. First of all, I'd like that you compared it to 2 different teams or people or companies. It takes like 7 days to have Facebook it's called the learning process, to get out of the learning to even show it to the right audience that you picked. So if you waited a week, you're now waiting 7 more days to get that. Now, as a Facebook marketer, we know that everybody you showed your ad to, now I could retarget to them. And I've had more impressions than the other guy who hasn't even started.
Right.
So I could be light years ahead because I can create my second campaign that is a retargeting campaign to target the people that seen my first ad. And it's just a perpetual growth, like you said. So I think you nailed it. It's not just about being behind 7 days. It's that I have a bigger audience, I have more pixeled audience than you do. Mm-hmm. I have a better retargeting strategy. I'll be the one that's going to get more impressions of my retargeting than you do. Mm-hmm. And definitely, if I optimize it right, I'll be light years ahead on who to show my ad to, what's my cost per lead, and so on.
And back to that momentum, I think that mindset is also compounding, right? So the idea of let's just let the data dictate the strategy is also going to compound. So for example, like you said, now you know that it's going to take 7 days for Facebook to even learn what you're trying to do. So rather than us going back and forth and deliberating on, should we use this picture or this picture or this ad copy? What do you think of this audience? And then we could say, well, let's look at what we did in the past and what is it? I mean, you could talk for 3 weeks when you were supposed to launch in 2 weeks. It took you 3 weeks. Then you still have that 7-day period, right? Yeah. Which, knowing that knowledge and having this mindset of just ship it, get it out there, and let the data dictate it, then you would have made that decision much faster, and you wouldn't have deliberated. You would have said, hey, here's our best 2 options. Let's do a test, split test, A/B test. Let's run both audience, both ads. I'll pay more in the short term rather than pay more in the long term of, losing.
I mean, what if you didn't get the lead, right? It's whoever saw the ad got the lead. You now not only lost on the ad, you could have probably lost the sale if you wanted to.
Yeah. In theory, in those 2 scenarios, we're both marketing to the same customers. So that goes back to the first mover advantage of, you launched the ad first. I'm having internal meetings about which, image to use, and you tested 5 different images and you already generated the lead to that one person.
So there's no point in waiting, in my opinion.
So I think the other thing that I want to, express is that when I talk about, either pay now or pay later, what we found in that it's not just the information that you gather, it's that the value in that information from those failures, perceived failures, I say, because the value in that information is greater than the actual expense or the cost that you would be paying, right? So I think as marketers, we know the cost per click and the cost per lead and cost per acquisition. Like, those are the metrics that are just drilled into our brain. But you also have to understand like the value of learning information, right? So we understand this when it comes to like online courses or going to college and paying for higher education. Like, you see that and it's like, oh, it's going to cost you $40,000 to go to college, right? And you don't look at that in terms of like ROI. Like, that's not how the college sells you. The university sells you like, well, here's your ROI going to be. It's going to be a 50-year return on investment after all your taxes and all that. Like, as marketers, we should look at that and say, should I spend an extra $1,000 this month to learn 2 months faster, 2 months ahead of schedule, so that now I don't have to wait until the next quarter to actually get the results I'm looking for? I can learn faster, right? Like, there's a lot of value in the findings, in the data, in the failures, especially if it's a blatant failure and you get people commenting on the Facebook post or whatever that may be, giving negative feedback. Like, it's just like within sales, a no is the second best answer you can get, is because it's a definitive answer. Yes is obviously the best. You want your ad to work. You want your sales pitch to work. But if it doesn't work, You don't want
maybe.
like, yeah, you don't want like anything that you don't really understand. Like, I don't know if it's working or not. People are clicking, they're not doing this, they're not doing that. You want to know like explicitly, this is not working because of X, Y, and Z. And the only way you can really do that, because there's so many variables and factors, is to test all those variables. And that's where speed is going to be far greater than waiting to perfection and trying to get all the variables correct.
I want to just add, in Google Ads is the same thing.
Yeah.
If remember, we used to say that in our podcast, when you're doing SEO, you should use Google Ads to find the keywords to optimize, because you're using that simply you're not going to rank higher by doing ads. It's to find out what keyword is getting the most conversions. Yeah. And you could guess and do SEO or pay for the knowledge, then, optimize the keywords with the highest conversions. So you're not having to pay Google forever.
I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah. I think it's a perfect example of exactly what we're talking about. And just to kind of reiterate and clarify, in this example, right? So let's say we had 10 keywords. Just an example, you'd always have more than that. But let's say you have 10 keywords that you think you have prioritized, right? So if you're trying to optimize, if all else is equal and you get no traffic today from any of those search terms, from an SEO perspective, you got to do obviously a lot of research. You got to look at your competition. You have to create content around those.
Right.
You have to prioritize, even because you probably can't focus on all 10 of those keywords or search terms at once.
Yep.
And then you also have the time factor of building the authority, letting Google index the content, continuing to build more authority, making adjustments, making changes, seeing how Google is going to react. And so that's going to take a long time, right? And then you get that sort of, analysis paralysis. Again, is like, is it worth it for us to take this time? And then maybe you take even longer to even write the content because you're not sure if it's worth it. Whereas, let's say you have this mindset of, hey, progress is just better than perfection. Let's let the data dictate the results. First step you would do is, just like you said, is here's our 10 keywords. Spin up a Google ad account. Let's bid on those keywords tomorrow so that we get the traffic the next day, and let's find out what happens. Is that even good traffic? Is that even worth investing into? If it is, then develop a plan for organic. But the idea that, we're just going to say we can't bid on this keyword because it's not going to be profitable on the cost per click perspective or cost per lead, or we can't compete with the competition. There's more value in the findings that this is a valuable keyword. Forget about the cost per click. If it's worth it, there's enough volume and those are good quality leads, then you invest into your SEO for long term for that to be effective.
And you don't want to change your SEO strategy every day either.
Right. Yeah. You can't, not like you can with other channels, like paid channels. Right. Absolutely. So, anything else that you want to add about, I guess, the idea of forward progress? And it's something that you believe into.
I think
10 out of 10, you're always, creating content, putting it out there.
Yeah. I guess the word is testing, because I promise you, I don't care what you're doing. You could be running your Facebook ads. You're trying to do your Google ads. You're trying to do an email campaign or podcast. Your first episode is going to suck. Know that 100%.
Yeah.
And your second might not be that great either. If you don't do it, you're never going to know how to get it better. All the things that I do, of course, we're a marketing company, so we do a lot of marketing for clients, and we also do our own marketing. So we have to know what works before we could even recommend to our clients. So we're like in ever test mode all day, right? And so I think I had a saying that we're always under construction. So we got construction signs up everywhere. Everywhere, every area of our marketing, our business is always being tested. So I believe that if I waited for the perfect business plan, the perfect pitch, the perfect website template, the perfect slides, I'd still be waiting. But we are light years ahead because of the fact that we didn't wait to do that, and neither do we want our clients to be sitting around waiting while the competition is eating their lunch. Yeah,
no, that's perfect. I think you had like 10 different nuggets in there, that sound bites that I think I agree with, in terms of, like you said, always under construction. I think is a good point of, hey, I would say like done is not finished, right? Like just because we launched this ad, put a blog post out there, put a social media post, like you can make adjustments, you can change it, you can delete it if it's really that bad and you're getting that much feedback. But like the other thing you need to keep in mind, like you just said, is, hey, we have to test it first because we're bringing it to our clients.
Right.
As an agent or as a marketer internally, you should think the same way. It's like, this content that you're creating is not for you. the content is for your audience. So what are you going to do in your board meetings? Go back and forth about what you think your prospect wants. Create the prospect, show it, or create the content, show it to your prospect.
Love that.
Get the feedback.
Let the market dictate if it's good or bad.
Exactly. You can't sit there and deliberate in these meetings and expect that you're going to nail it every single time.
And you're not the buyer.
You're not going to hit a home run every single time. Like you said, the first piece of content you create is probably going to be terrible.
Yeah.
So just create some momentum and then create that feedback loop and then build a process around that. And that's how you're going to be the most effective marketer.
No, it's awesome.
All right. Absolutely. Anything else?
Well, I mean, I think if you practice that personally, it's automatically going to be in your business. Every entrepreneur that we know, every pro was once an amateur, bro. Mm-hmm. How's that one? Right? Everybody's got to start somewhere. And a lot of times I think it's confidence. They're worried. Are they good enough? Can I start? I mean, maybe it's not going to, like you said, maybe it's the fear of failing. They're not sure. And there's a lot of factors. Oh, maybe what if, we lost $2,000 or whatever, and then we didn't get any leads? I'm like, how would you know?
Right.
How would you know? It's simply, it's the way that the organizations are built. Either you're not set to experiment and try new things. There's not that entrepreneurial spirit. So everybody's like risk averse. Yep. So nothing can fail. And asking a marketing agency for guarantee is exactly that. It's like, you can't go into entrepreneurship and think about consistent pay. Right. Similarly, you can't go into marketing thinking that the results are guaranteed. It's not.
Yeah, and you can't compare what you see maybe competition or other marketing teams putting out there. And because like you said, you're only going to see the end result. So you're going to say like, wow, we need to really follow, HubSpot, right? Because their content, they nail it every time. Their
marketing, their niche is marketing.
Right. And the thing is that you didn't see 15 years ago when their first blog was terrible, right? So you can't stop comparing your marketing, your resources, whatever, to someone else because you don't know the whole story. So I think that's probably, you asked at the beginning, why do marketers wait? I think that's part of it is like, it's perfection. You can't think of perfection in your own mind. So then you look at someone else who's doing it really well and you try to emulate that. And then something always seems off about it because it's not up to that standard. Well, you're skipping the entire journey, right? You're just trying to get to the end, and it's going to be very surface level in terms of your offering. So I think just create something, put it out there, see what happens, and it's probably not something that is maybe a little bit more difficult to sell internally because your CFO or your accounting people, they're going to ask, well, like, what is the ROI going to be? they want it to be a home run every time, right? Because it's possible, it is possible to get to that, but you have to be bought in, like you said, at an organizational level to the value of the data and information, and that this is our process. And the process is going to have that compounding effect that we talked about. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the podcast. If you did, give us a like, share it with your friends.
Absolutely.
Follow us, subscribe to the podcast. If you have any questions that you'd like us or topics that you'd like us to cover in the podcast, we talk about that feedback loop. Yep. So just like that, we created this piece of content. No idea if you guys are going to like it. If you do,
that's right.
Let us know. If you don't, definitely let us know. And Solomon, where can listeners submit their questions?
Absolutely. So you could go to oneims.com/podcast where they're all housed. You can also email us at podcast@oneims.com. We do get emails all the time and we love them. So thank you guys for, being loyal. I know there's a million marketing podcasts out there. This is a labor of love, Taylor. We do this because, we feel like we have a lot to contribute and we continue to share these strategies with our clients, and we wanted to make sure this is an outlet. If you're looking to learn more about marketing, if you're looking for inbound marketing, we want this to a place that is 100% educational, right? It's a safe podcast. I promise there will be no explicit content in this one. But thanks a lot for subscribing. We love feedback, as Taylor said, and we'll see you next time.
All right.
Growth Marketers is brought to you by OneIMS, helping you reach new heights through integrated marketing. One world, one web, OneIMS.